Vaise malungil tasil sel veklad. Kodamora Randy halak mo alguyum sang balo ay sirgi dili lali tasil so sengra nangaringi dili lungi milulur. Kapay Randy kamungko ay sirgi mo nangaringi.
Mamsulang spy de malungil litas swelbel mar veklad roguy. El altame ng tubet sa sirgi de lo bentri artikel المتمقس الانترناشونال مونيتاري فاند النتيان لو نجي ما akmo tur mo mga dadu ulto kora Amerikel letir nga kukti adra pekpeng na balu malbol kora introduce tir mga kora tutel tagi del International Monetary Fund. So good afternoon to everybody listening. Today we have a very special show. We're finding out a little bit about this International Monetary Fund. And we have special guests here that can kind of give us an overview of what is IMF. And I'd like to hand the mic to Elif, who's going to give us a little introduction of her, to herself and then also to IMF.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. Ali. My name is Elif Arbatli Saxegard, and I'm the mission chief for Palau at the International Monetary Fund. International Monetary Fund is an international organization. It's a multilateral organization. We are headquartered in Washington, D.C. And we visit all of our member countries. We have 191 member countries. Palau is one of them. And we visit all of our member countries at least once a year to take stock of developments in the economy. And we talk to different counterparts, including the government, and we provide our assessment, our independent assessment of the developments in every country, and we offer our policy advice to the government. And we are here as a team, so I'm very happy to introduce my team to you as well. So please, we are International Monetary Fund, so we are very international.
Yes.
We come from different parts of the world.
Yes, Ali Palau. My name is Ricardo Davico. I'm here with the mission team in charge of the external sector, which is the relationship and the transactions between Palau and the rest of the world. I'm originally from Brazil, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Ali, everyone. My name is Kavita, and I work on the real sector of the Palauan economy, and that is about forecasting the GDP and the inflation, and I come from Fiji.
Ali, my name is Irina. I'm working on everything fiscal and debt in Palau, so take a very close look at everything which in the budget and check out that everything matches, where the trends are good, and try to do my best. I'm French citizen, originally born in Russia.
Yeah, I forgot to mention where I'm from. I'm from Turkey, and I'm married to a Norwegian, so that's why I have two last names. And
how did you guys get into this IMF? How did you guys end up working for IMF? Tell us a little bit about that.
That's a very good question. In my case, I knew about the IMF because in Turkey, where I come from, the IMF was a very important institution where my country, when it got into trouble in terms of the economic troubles, they came to the IMF to borrow money. And so that's why I started getting interested in the IMF and economics. And so I pursued my studies in economics and always had the dream to work at the IMF. And so that's a little bit my story. But the IMF attracts people from all over the world. So as you can see, we have a wide variety of nationalities represented here. But I guess what brings us together and the common factor is that we've all studied economics and have interest in economics and have interest in public service. So it's a bit like being a public servant and working for the government, but to serve the international community. To promote financial stability and economic prosperity for the world as a whole. So that's the IMF's role in the global monetary system, and a little bit different than the World Bank and ADB, which you may also have heard of. So we play an important role, and I think most of the people at the IMF, they're there because they are interested in serving this purpose. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But what are some things that you would like to focus on in Palau?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are some key things that you'd like to focus on in terms of money, in terms of finance? Like,
Mm-hmm. So we focus quite a lot on taking a pulse of the economy. What is driving growth? What's happening to incomes? So that's one of the main objectives when we come and look at the economy of our member countries. And we try to understand, make projections and forecasts for what will happen to economic growth, employment, what happens to inflation and the prices, and how policies can impact growth. So what are the policies that can increase growth in a sustainable way in a country like Palau, and what can the government do to improve, for example, the ability of companies to invest and create more employment and create more incomes. So we look at policies that can support that, and we also look at the fiscal situation, what happens, what is happening to revenues, what is happening to spending, and we give advice to the government in terms of how they can manage sort of their fiscal policy so that they can generate prosperity and serve the functions of the government while ensuring that the debt of the government, that those policies are sustainable, that it doesn't lead to unsustainable policies. And we also give advice on how governments can improve the effectiveness of their spending. For example, how can they spend better on infrastructure, education, health, to improve the impact of those spending. We also give advice on the financial sector. We look at what's happening to bank, credits, what is the health of the financial system, and we also look at structural policies. How can the structural policies, which are policies that can, for example, improve the ease of doing business for companies to start and employ people and generate more prosperity. So we look at the whole range of policies and try to give an assessment. And sometimes this holistic assessment, bringing in all different pieces of the puzzle together, is typically our value added to the member countries. And we also bring in experiences from other countries. Because we work with 190 countries, we can have examples of best practices, what other countries are doing, how other countries that face similar problems and challenges tackle those problems. So those kinds of insights we can also bring into our discussions with the government.
so what are some countries that you have worked with that are similar to Palau, or have a very low population, or
Mm-hmm. So to be honest, Palau is the smallest country
that you've ever
I've
worked
with.
with?
I think among the other smaller countries, In terms of population, I worked on very briefly on Solomon Islands, which is also relatively small. But we also have, we work with countries, other Pacific Island countries, for example, and we have gathered internal experiences and knowledge of all of the countries. And I can draw upon that experience that is sitting in my institution. So I can go to my colleague who, for example, works on Nauru or Vanuatu or any other country and say, okay, how do you deal with this problem in your country? How do the authorities in your country tackle these issues? Maybe we can learn from each other. Maybe we can give some advice that is informed by that experience. But I know that, for example, Kavita is from Fiji, and I don't know if you have other countries you worked on. Irina has worked on many countries. Irina.
Yeah, thank you. I worked briefly on some kitts and nevis, and I was in touch with a bunch of Caribbean countries, including St. Lucia, which is probably quite comparable. Even though, the interesting consideration is not so long ago, what was it? 2 weeks ago, actually, the Minister of Finance from Palau was sitting on a panel open to the whole wide world in Washington, D.C. And on the same panel, he had his counterpart from the Indian Treasury. And the topic of the conversation was the success of the introduction of the value-added tax, or PJST, in the case of Palau reform. And everybody in the audience, about 300 people in person and maybe many more watching, were amazed at how similar the issues facing India, 1.5 billion people, second largest country population-wise in the world, were to Palau, a small Pacific Island nation. So sometimes the experiences that we share do not necessarily come from the size of the type of the economy, but from the type of issue the economy is addressing just now. And I'll stop there.
Wow, that's actually really interesting because, I would always think that, because we're small, and we don't have enough population, that we don't probably share the same problems as bigger countries. And in fact, some people think that, our prices are going up in Palau, but in other bigger countries that they can afford it because of the wages and the prices that are there. It's easier for people. But I think that's good to hear too, that I think the biggest thing for us too is that our export, we don't have enough exports. So are those some of the challenges that you guys are facing, and what are some of the things that you guys have sort of encountered so far?
So for in terms of the challenges, or let's say uncertainties that we see in Palau's economy, it is first of all, since last year, which was the last time we were here in Palau, it's important to first say that the economic prospects are significantly improved. We see tourism on the recovery path. It's still not where it was before the pandemic, but it is on the right path. And I think the uncertainty around the tourism recovery is still there, but it's much smaller compared to a year ago, where it was still a bit uncertain, much more uncertain as to how strong the recovery will be. I think the second thing is the compact agreement has been now signed, and that brings a little bit of certainty, right, to in terms of the ability of the government to have the sufficient resources to be able to manage its debt, but also to respond to shocks that might hit the economy. So there is much more resources for the government to tap into. I think inflation, you picked up on a very important point. Last year, inflation was very high. And you're right in saying that it was not only high in Palau, it was high in many other parts of the world. And inflation is coming down. However, the prices are still at a high level. And I think this is also an issue that we see in other countries. And as wages catch up with inflation, that process, will hopefully reverse itself over time. But indeed, when we had this large shock in terms of imported prices, but then of course there was the introduction of the PGSD as well, that led to a significant increase in inflation. But now it's coming down, which is an important, which is very good. So I think that's those are the positives that we see compared to last year. Of course, there's still downside risks that the Palau economy is subject to, including potentially a slower recovery in tourism is one. Climate shocks is another one, and if the major economies, the recovery in those major economies that send tourists to Palau, if there's a downturn in those economies, then the Palau economy would also be impacted. So we try to give advice on how the government should manage those risks and how they should prepare to face those risks as part of our dialogue with the government.
How should we face those risks? Like, what are some of those things that you guys want or have found out that we needed in Palau?
Some of it is, of course, beyond the control of Palau. So a lot of being a small open economy, which is highly dependent on one major export industry, which is tourism, means that Palau will always be vulnerable to these large fluctuations. So what Palau can do is instead to have the fiscal buffers to be able to counteract if there's a downside shock. For example, if you go back to the COVID pandemic, right? The government was able to raise spending and support households and businesses when there was this large shock, which essentially shut down the whole tourism sector. And it's still recovering. So we're still, so it was a very persistent and large shock that Palau is still trying to recover from. And what helped was the ability of the government to provide support to the economy by supporting households and businesses. And those buffers are important for a country like Palau, which is subject to these large shocks. So our emphasis and our policy dialogue is very much focused on fiscal policy. How should the government prepare for such shocks, which is by being prudent, by managing its debt prudently and ensuring that it's spending in the priority areas in an efficient way and saving some resources so that there is some money in the bank so that they can use it if there is a negative shock. So this is in essence a little bit the advice that we try to give. And Irina touched upon a very important post area, which is the tax reform that the government undertook, which was very important because having grants is very good. You know, you have essentially support from partners, from development partners, but having your own revenue resources really can enhance your ability to spend more, to invest more, to support vulnerable households, and invest in other important areas like health and education, which can also help address some of the challenges of migration, for example. So having the fiscal resources to be able to afford these things and invest in areas that only government can really invest in is very important. So we were very supportive of the tax reform, and of course there are a lot of other areas that the government can focus on. Improving the efficiency of spending, which was one factor that we discussed.
Can you give us one of those areas that we could probably improve on, maybe in terms of the tax reform? Because we did get a lot of information about the tax reform, like during the election, because everybody were doing their own research and putting them up. So, like, were there things that you guys found that we can improve in terms of the tax reform?
In terms of the tax reform, as I mentioned, it was a very important reform because it introduced the value-added tax, which was very important. And it also introduced profit tax. Those are some of the kind of more, it makes the tax system more efficient compared to the taxes that they replaced.
Right.
So even if the tax reform was not intended to raise more revenues, it actually ended up raising more revenues because I think it ended up expanding the base and increasing compliance. So as a general principle at the IMF, we are in favor of switching to value-added taxes. So in that respect, the PGSD was actually very well designed. Another thing that it had is that it had a single rate, which is another element that we typically support. And what is also nice is that the tax also the fall reform was also aiming to compensate lower income households using the proceeds from the tax reform. So I think all of these elements we were that we think were done very nicely, and we were actually also involved in advising the government over many years as they designed this tax reform. Tax reforms are not easy to implement in any country, which was one of the themes that came out of this panel that Irina mentioned. So it's not politically easy to implement tax reform. So in that sense, it was commendable.
Is that something you've seen in other places when they've done their tax reform, that there was a huge people that were against it, and does that happen in other countries?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
I worked on a number of...
Sorry, bring the mic a little closer.
Okay, sorry. Worked on a number of fiscal reforms and tax reforms specifically. One that I could share is the case of Nicaragua. They were, struggling and introducing the tax reform. And typically, there's a learning curve, right? People are afraid of the change. It takes a non-trivial amount of effort to learn how to file the new tax system, right? To start doing your books. So in the beginning, people see the costs of reforms much higher than the benefits. So it takes a little, that's the unfair part. That's a little bit like with kids, right? If you
Yeah.
look at the other families, you can see the cost of raising the kids. You probably don't see the joy of being a parent that much, from the exterior of the system, right? So it's typically quite costly to switch regimes and to have people there has to be at least a year or two that pass so that
Yeah.
people learn how to do it, become a bit more comfortable. I actually wanted to share an example from Palau
Mm-hmm.
that almost 2 years have passed, right? And somebody from the tour operator was telling us, oh, I actually love the business profits tax. It turns out my expenses to grow the business, I can deduct them.
Yeah.
Beforehand, they had to come from someplace.
Right.
Now I'm just deducting them, and so it stimulates me to purchase maybe an additional, piece of equipment, maybe to hire a little bit more people, maybe to, think of expanding into a different type of activity. So, now that the initial burden or cost is a little bit behind us, maybe there will be a little better perception that there are also benefits. Costs are non-deniable. Everywhere where VAT was either introduced or the rate, many countries, I was working on France and Spain during the global financial crisis, and all of them, no exception, had to raise the VAT rates. So in Palau, 10% sounds like a lot, but in Europe, it's 21 to 24% VAT rates, and some of them got raised additionally by a couple of percentage points to cover for the needs to finance. So this is it's a difficult process. So every time there is this move in the rate introduction, prices tend to overshoot. So we were not surprised to see a push inflation in the first year. The question is, will it, with time, stop being a burden, pushing the prices up? Maybe businesses would absorb a little bit of cost increases and not pass it on to the consumer. Maybe consumers will change their behavior. So our hope is that this temporary shock, so the price to pay, if you wish, will be disappearing over time, and the benefits such as filing taxes, deducting costs, growing the business, getting more educated about your own books, which is, the positive side product of any tax, modernizing tax reform tends to be for individuals and businesses. Maybe those will become a little more prominent. So we will keep an eye on Palau, and we hope that people realize sooner than later that, there are costs and benefits, and hopefully the benefits will outweigh the cost. Thank you.
All right. And speaking of what you guys sort of envision Palau to be like, tell us a little bit about what type of Palau do you want to see, or what type of Palau do you want to grow? How do we grow our economy, basically? Because you guys are sort of here to help us, advise us on some of those directions. And you're talking about some of those countries that you've worked with, and they're similar to Palau, having similar issues. So what are the steps that Palau needs to take towards a better future? And I know that's kind of a big question, but yeah,
It is a
heavy one, but I'm just going to
Big
throw that in there.
I think the the counterparts in the government that we talk to, they're emphasizing ensuring that tourism, the benefits from tourism this time around, as it comes back, is accrued more broadly within the population, that it actually creates more value added in the rest of the economy, and it's done in a sort of more cultural tourism, adding more value added to the local economy. I think that's one strategic decision. So I think growing the economy, ensuring that there's prosperity, there needs to be a plan for how to grow the economy. And if you look at Palau, it has its advantage in tourism, and so the idea is to think about how can this, the pristine Palau, how can this beautiful country grow its tourism potential in a way that adds the most value to its own economy. So I think that's one area that is very important, and also, how do you create private sector jobs related to that for the population that attracts people to Palau? We take note of the fact that there's a lot of migration. So how do you attract Palauans to stay in Palau, to create new businesses, to create more value added? And a key driver will be tourism, but how can you ensure that tourism, the number of tourists that come, as they come, actually Palau's economy doesn't grows by much more than it used to? How can you create more value added by every single tourist that comes? So there's an element of investing in infrastructure to ensure that there's the healthcare and the education is addressed, the skilling, reskilling of the population, of the labor force. There is an element of ensuring that firms and entrepreneurs who wants to start their own business have the resources and the financing that they can tap into to start their businesses. And those would be, some of the kind of structural reforms that the government can undertake to ensure that they can generate the most benefits from tourism. And the other element is resilience. How do you ensure that you are resilient to, for example, climate shocks that might come? How do you ensure that you, when you make investments, you make those investments that are more climate resilient? So a lot of it is having a good plan, a strategic plan, identifying what needs to be, what are the resource needs to implement that plan, and at the same time making sure that you have a macroeconomic stability. So in other words, you're not spending beyond your means. So you ensure that you have some savings to protect yourself from shocks. At the same time, implement reforms to increase the potential of the economy.
We've been through a couple of pretty big shocks in terms of tourism.
Boom bust cycles.
Where all of a sudden we had an influx of a particular, tourist. And then all of a sudden they were gone.
Yes.
And we depended on them for a lot of things.
Yes.
And so we've been through sort of that, that whole cycle of, figuring out our tourism, and also realizing that tourism just can't really be the only factor, but or the only means of income for Palau. And we have to kind of look around for other things. But it's been kind of difficult, and maybe you have probably discovered some of those things, like, for example, rice can't grow in Palau or some stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of things that where we can't or we aren't able to grow, or we aren't able to develop on our own. So what do you do when you're faced with that, like, as a country, like, when you have those sort of challenges, how do you, how do you make money? Like, I'm just gonna be straight up. Like, how do we, open up policies for more export, or how do we create policies that will help Palauans create more export? Is that just up to the people to just get up and do something, or what's really the core behind that, into pushing Palau into having more means of income?
I think diversification, I think that's what you're saying, to try to rely not only on one sector, but try to also develop some of the other sectors
Right.
of the economy. That's absolutely correct. I think fishing, agriculture, some sectors can be developed. Of course, the economic forces will always say that there, like you said, you cannot grow certain things
Yeah.
here. The size of the country is a limit in terms of limitation in terms of developing some economies of scale when it comes to certain sectors. But I think you can still, within those constraints, still try to promote diversification, so that you're not only relying on tourism, but also within tourism. You can try to promote tourism that is higher value added, is less prone to some of these fluctuations. So you can do that by diversifying your source countries for tourism, for example. So you're not just dependent on one single country or region. I think those are some ways of ensuring against these bust cycles, and being innovative with maybe sectors that are related. So to develop, again, side sectors to tourism. So there could be some more potential there. So I think it's very difficult when you're very small and when you're so far away from all some of the other countries, and it's very costly to develop other tradable sectors or export sectors. But I think within those constraints, you would try to do your best to diversify, and there might be some scope for that.
All right. So my head is like jumping to a lot of
Oh,
ideas
yeah,
and stuff,
please.
but as far as your work though, like what are some of your deliverables, or the things that you guys want to make sure that you complete before you leave Palau?
So we're at the end of our visit. This
Okay.
was a very short visit. It was only 5 days.
Aw.
I know. We are very sad. It was too short. We will be back next year for longer.
Yay.
So every other year we're here for a longer stay,
Okay.
and we have a more in-depth consultation. You can read our report if anybody is interested. From last year,
Yeah.
we wrote all of our recommendations for Palau in a report, which is called an Article 8 staff report,
Wow.
Article 4 staff report. And so what we are trying to do on this visit is to learn, take stock of developments. We will share our insights, our thoughts with the government before we leave, and then we'll be back next year for a longer consultation, and we'll write another report after that. But our objective is to give an independent advice to the government. That's and to share our views also with the broader
Yeah.
international community.
And I think that's really important because, you know, we really want to hear an independent
Yeah.
opinion, and just not opinion, but at least advice on a lot of things, you know, and we may or may not use them. You know what I mean? And that's the beauty of being independent.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, but these types of help and advice are really important, and we want to make sure that you guys get as much information that you need as well. So, in terms of reaching out to you guys, is there a website or something that we can reach out to email or something to contact you guys?
Absolutely. We have a page at the IMF's website, which is dedicated to Palau. So if you Google Palau IMF, you'll probably find that webpage, and it includes all kinds of information about Palau and IMF's relationships, and you can reach. There should be a contact information there, I think, or you can always email me at IMF. I'm the mission chief, so you can find probably my name on the report
All right.
that we just published last year.
All right. Awesome. Okay. And then lastly, what flight did you guys, how did you guys get to Palau? And did you have to fly United?
Long and painful. Yes.
Okay.
I flew United as well.
Yeah.
You all flew in United?
Many
Alright.
I
changes.
flew
3 days.
with the Air Nauru coming to Brisbane.
Oh, nice. Oh, you got that nice flight. Yeah. All
Not
right.
so nice on the way back though.
Yeah, I take the island hopper back.
But still, yeah, that's really good. And I'm glad you guys got to fly those different flights, because I know that those flights also play a role in our economy as well. So maybe we don't have to dive into the company, but at least, like, you know, tell us a little bit about how flights affect economies and what you guys have found, or what you guys have sort of discovered about Palau.
Yeah. Flights is the single most important determinant of what happens with tourism numbers, of course. And what really got us to make very bad forecasts initially, because we were projecting the recovery in tourism to take place much earlier. But I think what we didn't really realize at the time was how difficult it was to restart flights.
Yeah.
So very optimistic, also because now there are much more flights now from more countries, and there will be also a flight from Japan, we heard, starting next year.
Yeah.
So all of these are very important. You need the flights to come to Palau, and so yeah, it is absolutely critical to restart them, and
Yeah.
it's
Diversify.
diversify to other source countries and try to get they're good. The flights are important if you can kind of depending on where they come from. If you can get flights from certain hubs, then there's connector cities, then you'll be able to sort of reach to a broader
Right.
set of countries, and people can come. I came to Palau through Turkey, actually, so I was happy that I could go to Manila and then Manila.
Oh, you went Manila. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's I forgot. That's our neighbor.
So
that we
somebody
can...
from Turkey can easily come to Palau thanks to.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right.
May I add that Palau has such a uniquely beautiful nature.
I was
Such
just about to ask, what is your first impression
beautiful culture.
of Palau? What are your first
that
impressions?
many people would want to visit. Many people already know about Palau. But
Yeah.
we tell the ones who don't, they all get very excited. So it's critical that there be a bit fewer connections and a bit easier ways of getting in. We would like as many friends and relatives and everybody we know to come and visit. And we can't recommend enough, not just the Rock Islands, which is beyond amazing.
Did you guys go?
It's our favorite place on earth, and I can speak for myself. I've been to over 60 countries. This is number
Wow.
one, and I don't
Really?
say it lightly. However, can I please send our love to the state of Irai for the cultural tour? We
Yeah.
enjoyed so much.
Wow,
So
that's where I'm from. That's my
our
village. Yeah.
personal goal is to come back next time for a little longer and be able to visit more communities and really
Yeah.
learn how it is life on the ground, how people live, the cultural experiences. So please keep it up. Please keep it up for people like
Wow.
us, because we are dying to see more of that.
That's
And
great.
we almost learned the Irai song. We did not, but we promised that next time.
Next
we'll
time.
play that video and try to learn just a little bit.
All right. That's awesome. That's really, really good. All right. And any other experiences? Do you guys want to share?
I have a very good
You can
experience
just
coming to
bring the
Palau.
mic closer. Yeah.
Yes, I have a very good experience coming to Palau. This is my first time being here.
All
And I
right.
come from Fiji. So both economies are tourism based.
Yeah.
economies. The countryside is safe when you look at the ocean and everything. So very nice. It's very nice to be here.
All right. Yeah. I love Fiji. Fiji's like so amazing. I have a lot of friends from Fiji. So, Bula. Yeah.
I happen to be a scuba diver, so this is.
Oh, did you go
perfect-
scuba
I
diving?
went scuba diving on this trip.
Wow.
Last trip as well. So
Yeah.
this is. I've gone scuba diving in many places in the world, and this is one of the premier spots. Definitely. It's beautiful.
Wow. I mean, you could have just been some people behind some computers that just came to Palau to just do some research. But I think it really helps too if you guys are also sort of, in that whole tourism and, really diving into all those different areas to really see it. So and I love diving. I've been diving. I'm from Irai, I'm from those places. Like we're literally so small that everybody's sort of connected to everything. But yeah, that diving most definitely.
Yeah.
And how
Same
about
here.
you?
This is my third time in Palau.
All right.
I went diving every single time, and it's just been fascinating.
Yeah.
The nature here is not comparable to anything I've ever experienced. Just going around the Rock Islands, and it's been just fascinating, experiencing the nature and the beauty that you have here.
I've lived here my whole life, and I can tell you that every time you go out, it's really like amazing. Every
Yeah.
time you go out, so
Yeah.
that's
So we feel very lucky to work on Palau, so that we get to come here, and we'll definitely be back.
yeah.
I'm bringing my family back as soon as I can.
Oh, that would be so great. Yeah, and thank you. That would be you contributing as well to the economy. So
absolutely.
thank you
Yeah,
so
we
much
are
for
doing our best.
doing that.
Led by Irina, she's our.
I think half of France would be more than delighted to come to Palau.
Yeah,
The larger half, right? And then everybody. It's just not very easy to get to
yeah.
now, but hopefully. there's a
Exactly.
little bit.
Yeah. But I think we're doing okay. That's why I brought up the flights, because I think we're kind of doing okay
Doing
in terms
better,
of
yeah.
getting more different flights,
Mhm.
and that's, it's hard, like even for United, for example, like, there's a lot of Palauans that work on United, and they get a lot of passes and all that stuff. So it's also hard for us to, do anything to sort of affect United, because we love United. And so we don't want to affect it as well. So
I mean, we don't mind United, just like cutting out the Guam stop would
Yeah.
save a lot of energy.
yeah, so we need some adjustments, some improvements. There we go. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for visiting our station and for sharing all these great insights into your work. And we're really interested in seeing your report and sort of finding out some of those key advices and things that you guys found for Palau. So thank you guys so much. And we'll look into IMF website. Is it?
Yes,
I'm a
IMF's
first-
Palau website.
So we can
will
just
show-
Google Palau IMF?
IMF,
Okay.
and it will show all of our reports that we published recently.
All right.
It will have some information about the relationship between the IMF and Palau, and some contact information I think should also be there.
All right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so thank you guys so much again, and we hope to see you guys again back in Palau.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
hosting us.
much.
All right, tandim na gigit ako kno sa edit mo kuman sulang tune in, and back to you, Spy.
Kay malunguli tasil sel mergidro ko iloreng sa 87.9 FM. Si tulong nila talk show gid.